Good evening, everyone. This is Steve with Real Progressives, and I want to talk to you all about a test I did on the page a little while ago. I took an old article from the Washington Post, dreaded enemy of the movement, and I posted about how they complained about Bernie Sanders being $17 trillion short in revenue for his healthcare plan. And what I wanted to see was how many of my friends and progressives would take the approach of ad hominem attacks against the horrible Washington Post, and they are horrible. How many of them would talk about, well, every other country in the world, you know, all these other countries have single payer, why can't we? That's the low-hanging fruit. That's the stuff you say when you don't understand economics. And then there were all the other ones that just said, oh, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. And yes, yes, yes. But none of those is really the right answer. You know what I mean? And it's kind of an important issue so that you can actually go out by yourself, kick the training wheels off, and go into the territory of the libertarian, or kick off the training wheels and go into Republican strongholds, or even the Hillary strongholds, the people that really truly don't get economics, or sadly into some of our own progressive circles where people, they got all the right sensibilities, but they just don't get money. They don't understand macroeconomics and federal financing. So I wanted to see, and unfortunately I wasn't shocked. Everybody was throwing up everything but the right answer. And that's because our government, including the people we love, have sold us a lot of stuff because it's easier to tell you that you've been paying into Social Security, or that you've been paying, your hard-earned tax dollars have been paying for this and paying for that. The idea of telling you that taxes and spending are separate functions is too much for most people's heads. They explode. You mean to tell me that we can spend without taxing? Oh shit, what is that? That means that, oh no, that means that W didn't cause the destruction economically. That's like mind-blowing, because everybody says that's what happened. Unfunded wars, you put it on the credit card. There is no credit card. Doesn't work that way. But the creature of Jekyll Isle, what about the Federal Reserve? What about fractional reserve lending? Wrong again. In 1971, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. Why does that matter? Well, gold was what we backed our currency with. Gold was how we managed to provide some sort of value to our currency. Now, we no longer are on a gold standard. We haven't been since 1971. Why does that matter? Because back in 71, you could take your dollar and you could say, I'd like some gold for this. And they changed the dollar out for gold. It was what they call a convertible currency. That also kept a constriction on the amount of money that could go out into the world, because it had to be backed by gold. If you don't have enough gold, you can't put out any more dollars, and so forth. So what happens? Oh, we go pillage somewhere. You know, we do something to get more gold to expand our economy. Well, we knew that that was really a silly, constricting thing. So when he took us off the gold standard, it makes the Ron Paul guys go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You know, what do I do now, right? I've been buying all this silver and all this gold and it's stable, right? The problem is, back in the day when we were on the gold standard, there were these bank runs. People would freak out and they would pull all their money from the bank, and there was no way to buffer. There was no way for us to absorb any shocks to the economy. So you would see, if you look before 1982, because it took from 71 to 82 for us to figure out how to work monetary policy to keep inflation relatively stable. and it has been like stupid stable, like Big Ben stable, like Stratum 4 stable since 1982. But between 71 and 82, you had this wild swing of inflation, right? And I see people, it's the petrodollar. No, it's not. No, it's not. They didn't understand how to balance out federal money and how to keep the interbanking dollars at such a level that they could maintain inflation, so that it was like, you know, when you're riding in a car and it's got really bad shocks and you're like, tick, 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 tick. That's what the world was like before they understood how to work within a sovereign fiat currency. Fiat meaning that it's a representative, it's like a token, right? It could be anything. It could be shells, it could be corn on the cob, it could be locks of hair, it could be ears, whatever, right? But that fiat currency, it represents some other thing. It represents something. And in this case, our dollar represents a tax credit. That's it. It's a tax credit. So the thing that gives our dollar the value today is that we tax in it. In other words, if you don't pay your taxes, you're collateral. You're the reason why our dollar holds its value. If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. It's a pretty interesting concept, but they use us as human collateral for the money. And you might say that's a scary thing, but it really isn't all that scary if you think about it. Because, and this is where we progressives can make some headway with our brethren over there on the right, and our brethren and sisters within the blues, the vote blues, the conservative blues. We can change our tax structure. We still got to tax because taxes are vitally important to maintaining the value of the dollar. But that tax structure can be very different. It can be very, very different. You can totally eliminate state taxes, and you could put together one big federal block grant, one tax, hypothetically. This is just me spitballing, right? And we could take block grants to every single state and provide them with funding for everything, so there'd be no more unfunded mandates, there'd be no more dilapidated bridges, there would be no more schools that are in ill repair, there would be no more kids that are lacking in education, there would be nobody without health care. I mean, the list is long. We could even literally retrofit every single car in America with a battery or whatever technology is available. If we wanted to, if we so chose to, we could do it today. We could completely eradicate fossil fuels today, not in 20 years, today, if we chose to. Now, I talked a little bit about this on Tim Black, a lot about it actually. It was like 2.5 hours, man. Can you imagine? I can ramble on this stuff. But since our money is not backed by anything other than the full faith and credit of the United States, which in turn is backed by the fact that we go to jail if we don't pay our taxes. And it has to be paid in US dollars. Wheelbarrows full of diamonds don't pay your taxes. Wheelbarrows full of gold or petrol doesn't pay your taxes. Only wheelbarrows of cash, US dollars, pay your taxes. So what do we do with all this knowledge, right? What do we do with this new understanding of how federal financing works? And again, this is not like, I'm not prescribing any microeconomic policies to this at this point. I'm just simply stating good, bad, and different. It isn't a matter of good or bad. It's just the deal. It is what it is. Our federal dollars do not have to be taxed to be spent. However, to keep our dollars worth something, for all the hyperinflation, what about Zimbabwe? What about Argentina? We'll get to that sometime. Not right now. I don't really, maybe I'll get to it. We'll see. But when you think about it, taxation is what drives the value of the dollar. It keeps it stable. It's what makes it all over the world the most stable currency ever. It's fantabulous, right? So, when you guys think about it, ask yourselves, why are you willing to settle for Obamacare? Why are you willing to settle for a climate that's drying up right now as arid conditions take over and water wars are about to ensue? Why are you willing to accept that? Think about it. Because you always have thought that your tax dollars, your hard-earned federal tax dollars, funded spending. And so you're like, God, we're broke. What are we going to do? We're going to pass this debt to our kids. No, we don't borrow dollars from China. Think about it. Mr. Chinese person, can we please borrow a US dollar? No. China buys treasury bonds. That's what our debt is. In other words, they have a deposit at the bank to stabilize their own currency. That's the debt. It's not really debt as you know it, right? It's not debt like as in, oh my God, if I don't pay my credit card bill this month, oh Lord, we're in trouble. It's really more about they're stabilizing their currency. So guess what? If they decide, hey, we don't want any more US Treasury bonds, what happens? Cash out and give them some US dollars. Or we just do a debit and a credit on a friggin' spreadsheet at the Fed. We're not talking about anything majorly crazy here, folks. This is pretty basic, but they've snowed you with... Now Clinton sits there and gives you this real legal mumbo-jumbo answer for a most simple thing. Do you believe in fracking? Well, actually, the exponent of the trigonometrical blah, 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 blah. Shut up. What is the answer? Yes or no, right? Well, they give you all these fancy answers. Well, you know, gosh, if you consider this 2.7% multiplier, and we do this and we do that, and, well, how about taxes just don't fund federal spending? How about that simple? Instead of baffling America with a bunch of bullshit, why not just tell them the truth? Because they can't keep us hungry. They can't keep us starving. They can't keep us willing to do whatever jobs are there if they don't keep us believing the myth that taxes fund spending. That's right. So when you're trying to bridge the divide with your Republican friends and so on, you know, and they say, we got to lower taxes. Taxes are super low right now compared to historical times. They really are. They're not distributed properly. They're really hitting the middle class and the poor way too hard when you consider impact. Like if you tax me $1, it's going to hurt my ability to buy a loaf of bread. But if you tax Joey up there who's got $20 billion, I don't think he's even going to miss it, really. So, you know, how do we get that paradigm within our progressive movement to help us stop saying stupid stuff so that we can then fight those guys over there that are blocking us for health care and blocking us for all these other things? I mean, I don't care if we spend $20 gazillion on anything. I'm not terribly worried about efficiency. I mean, it'd be nice because you want good customer service. But don't do it because of the cost, because your taxes aren't funding it. Now, your state taxes are. And that's why I am like an advocate for federal block grants, using sovereign money to fully fund the states. You can let them have their 10th Amendment and all their states' rights crap. You can let them manage it however they want. However, the caveat, they have to meet X, Y, and Z. Period. And no, we don't stop the funding because the people shouldn't suffer because of incompetent leadership. We just go after the leadership and hold them legally liable for screwing their people, for violating the 14th Amendment. Just an idea. Just think it out of the box, trying to be a revolutionary here, using what I know to come up with a possible scenario that allows us to literally do everything we'd like to do. Now, the reason why the US dollar is ubiquitous around the world, first of all, is because we are the world's police force. We stop being the world's police force, we've got some changes that we have to go through. That's a good thing, but it has some ramifications you should be aware of. Just like cutting our military budget. That has some huge ramifications too. If we cut the military budget, families, forget the bombs, forget the guns, forget the bullets, forget all the things you despise about the military. It's the families that actually depend on that. And I'm not just talking about soldiers. I'm talking about everybody from Vermont down to New Mexico that actually builds the widgets for the ships, builds the widgets for the big guns and the bombs. All these people, they have purposely built the military-industrial complex in every state and territory so that nobody is willing to cut the F-15 fighter or any of the other things. So you have to account for, we don't want to cut spending. We want to shift spending. We actually want to blow spending up. We want to increase spending massively. We want to blow spending up. We want a federal jobs guarantee, right? Think about that. If the federal government was the employer of last resort, why not? Hell, we could pay people $15 an hour right off the bat. We could set the new bottom. We could provide those people free health care like the one that we want, Medicare for all. And we could set the bar. We can do a lot of things. But our revolutionaries have to understand that first so that they can fight the good fight. If we don't know it, how can we teach it to the Republicans? Because we have to teach it. We can't just, we can't do that to them. It's not going to get us anywhere. I mean, trust me, I want to go, boom! But that doesn't do any good. That just pisses people off and, makes them entrenched. And when you get down to it, once you realize taxes don't fund spending, you begin to realize where racism kicks in. I don't like him having an Obama phone. That bad guy sat on the porch. I don't like the way he dresses. He should go to jail. His kid comes to school stinking because they can't afford deodorant. I don't care. They're all smelly. This, that, and the other. I mean, all the racism built into the economy. You start to see it once you realize your taxes aren't funding spending. It's really about keeping people down and growing the gap between the highest and the lowest. That's why they do it the way they do it. You've got to be smarter than that. You've got to stand up and demand that they take care of the 99%. That's the only way it's going to change. But I will get people all day long. But what about fractional reserve lending? The Federal Reserve handles interbanking dollars, meaning swaps and stuff like that, quantitative easing, all that bullshit on the back end that doesn't ever make it to Main Street. And they adjust interest rates for lending and interbanking lending. And they set the Fed funds rate, which should be zero. It should always be zero. Right? I mean, there's no reason. We're not making money. There's no fractional reserve lending. They don't need to make any money. They don't make money the way we think of making money. They make money different, right? They make money with all the man-made rules within Wall Street. That's why Wall Street's such a parasitic environment. But that Wall Street stuff could be offset big time if our Congress developed the spine and the will to spend into the economy. I wouldn't have a problem with free trade agreements if our Congress spent on the 99%. If we're going to say, hey, we are going to be we're just always going to be a net importer, meaning we're trading our paper dollars for their goods and services. If we made that decision and we spent at the federal level on citizen benefits accordingly, who the hell wants to work in a factory? I don't. Send those jobs over to China. I don't care if that's the case. You build out the infrastructure bill, right? Come up with a great infrastructure bill. I tell you what, a lot of people would love to do underwater welding. A lot of people would love to work on bridges. They would love to put windmills and turbines all over the place. They'd love to build out an alternate energy grid, power grid. People love that. Blue-collar workers. Hell, you go into a coal mine, you say, hey, coal miners, guys, I know you love getting dark, black lung and all that good stuff, but we got a deal you can't refuse. We're going to not only save your life, we're going to give you free health care, we're going to get you education, but we're also going to give you a job right off the bat, like for like, in natural green energy. We could do that today, but we won't, because people are still peddling the lie that they're going to hand over this big giant debt to their grandkids. Folks, I got a lot of kids. I got 9 kids. 9. I don't want to hand debt to them. But our debt isn't going to go that way. That's not how it works. But they've peddled that lie to you so that you'll continue to be a good boy or girl, fall in line, and not beg for too much because it's got to come from somewhere. Where's that money come from? Oh my God, we got to tax our way to prosperity. Trust me, this took a lot for me to grasp too. I have an MBA, for those of you who don't know. And I learned all the classical economic training and Keynesian economics, and I learned Austrian. I learned the Ron Paul world. I learned praxeology. I learned all that stuff. The reality is that they did not teach. They did not teach what it meant to have a sovereign, free-floating, meaning non-pegged, fiat currency. They didn't even teach us what monetary sovereignty was. And monetary sovereignty is the root of all economics, period. You tell me Greece is screwing up. We don't want to be the next Greece. I agree with you. We don't. So let's make sure we don't give up our monetary sovereignty. Greece gave up their monetary sovereignty. They joined the EU. They got onto the euro. And they were no longer the currency issuer. They had to now beg someone else for money to function. Now, if they went back to the drachma, they could still stay in the EU. They'd just be off the euro. If that's too much for you, I get it. Trust me. It took me a while to figure this stuff out too. Like Detroit. Detroit's going to go, went bankrupt, right? Why is that? Detroit is a currency user. The United States is the currency issuer, our federal government. And yes, the Federal Reserve is a private entity within the government whose charter comes only from Congress. Look it up. I promise you. It's there. And for those of you guys out there who are conspiracy theorists and Rothschild, Roth, blah, 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 whatever, I read The Creature at Jekyll Isle. I got it in my basement. It's collecting dust now because it's basically a paperweight now. It's a paperweight. The history of the Federal Reserve notwithstanding, I'm telling you the way federal financing works today. Today. We aren't demanding better, so they're not doing better. If you want better, you got to demand better. And to demand better, you got to know what your parameters are. I'm giving you your parameters. It's up to you whether you listen to me or not. And I don't want you to take my word for it. I really don't. I want you to read the links that I'm going to supply in this next, when we're done here. I'll put some links into this. I want you to do your own research. I want you to fact check me. But trust me, if you go to a Austrian economics place, if you go to Mises, if you go to a libertarian world, you're going to read, oh my God, there's nothing backing it. It's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. They're a liar. Tell them, say, if it's nothing, don't worry about it, man. Give me your worthless paper dollars. It's all good, man. Give them all to me. You don't need that crap. It's not worth anything. They shut up real fast. They really do. They're easy to beat. That's why I call them LOL libertarians. They give me a lot of chuckles. They really don't get this stuff. They're living in a Bretton Woods America that doesn't exist anymore. Bretton Woods was the accord that put basically the world on the gold standard. Everybody kind of lived off the gold standard. We left in 71. There is no petrodollar. There is no gold standard. We're monetarily sovereign. We created the dollar out of thin air. We'll spend it out. We create the rules around the dollar. Every rule you know and love about the dollar has been created by man. And every one of them can be unmade by man. Don't be fooled. There is no finite amount of dollars sitting around that we can only use. And shit, all the wealth's at the top. We'll frickin' spend money, damn it, into the economy. When Obama saved the economy, he put close to $1 trillion back in with his, what do they call it, the stimulus package. Unfortunately, most of that money never ever made it out. It never made it onto a lot of the goods and services and different private entities like people, regular people. It was bailing out banks. It was bailing out friggin' auto industry. It was bailing out this and that. It never really made it to Main Street. It did just enough to give us a heartbeat. Boom. Boom. And, for all the Bush bashing, and I don't like the man, so please don't confuse this. This is just about economics. This isn't about partisan shit. Bush inherited a lot of bullshit from Bubba. His vaunted surplus was taking money out of the economy. That money doesn't get recycled. There's no piggy bank with old crumpled up dollar bills in it. They expanded the wealth gap by getting rid of doing the welfare reform, took money out of the economy. That money, whether you like what people do on welfare or not, is irrelevant. That money was going into the economy. It was growing our economy. And when they cut it, they shrunk it. And all of a sudden he had a balanced budget. All of a sudden he had a surplus. All of a sudden the private sector, as soon as he walked out the door, we had our first recession. Check me. I promise you I'm right. I'm right. And then we had a bunch of other issues that went down. If you all saw The Big Short, The Big Short was pretty freaking awesome, wasn't it? That was about the banks and what they were doing, and all the bets they were putting on top of bets on top of bets. Now, I don't have a problem per se with the federal government bailing different industries out if they needed to. It's not what I want them to do, but I'm just saying philosophically it's not as big a deal. What the big deal is that there were millions of us. They were banking on us going belly up. They were banking on us losing our home to make money. That right there could have been solved. It could have been solved by federal spending into the economy. We could have saved ourselves. But they chose instead to save the industries. Shame on you, Obama. Instead of saving Main Street. The more you learn about economics, the more strongly you'll be able to fight for our issues. The more strongly, the more purposeful you'll be able to be to fight for single-payer health care. Because you didn't lose single-payer health care because we didn't have the ability to do it. You lost it because everybody said, how are you going to pay for it? And you just, instead of knowing the answers, I'm going to circle back to the beginning, you said, well, how come every other industrial nation has single-payer? Of course we can do it. Well, you're right. But you still don't have a clue why it's the case. And I'm telling you why it's the case. I'm telling you why. Stick with me. I promise you I won't lead you wrong on this. Stephanie Kelton, look her up. L. Randall Wray, look him up. William Black, look him up. James Galbraith, look him up. Steve Keen, who is in Australia, look him up. You'll thank me, I promise you. Now they talk in a jargon that is a little bit foreign. And if I could ever have 5 minutes alone with them, I would beg them to help me break it down for Jane and Joe Sixpack. But they kind of talk amongst each other in that upper stratosphere in the ivory tower. And it makes it very difficult for people like you and I to assimilate that and actually make actionable change in our way of voting, in our way of participating in the political system. And that's a fault of theirs. They know the answer, yet they refuse to break it down in such a way that average Jane and Joe can do it. Now, I'll tell you, there are some publications out there that do it. One of them is by a man named Warren Mosler, and it's called 7 Deadly Innocent Frauds. I'll put the link in the top, so when you're done with this, after this is over, go up to the top and look at the notes. I will provide you with a whole slew of links. But it breaks it down, it explains it, and it explains it in a way that you can understand. And I just love Warren Mosler for that reason. You know, Stephanie Kelton, I've said it a bunch of times, but just for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, she was Bernie Sanders' chief economic advisor. L. Randall Wray worked with her as well. There's this whole connection to UMKC, which is the only school really that has a true honest-to-God modern monetary theory tract in it. They are geniuses. They are bona fide geniuses. And I worship the ground they walk on. I just wish they spoke more plainly for everybody else to understand. Because it's really simple. We don't need taxes to spend. We make our own money, so it's not like we have to borrow it from China. And we can never go broke because we're monetarily sovereign. It just blew every one of your myths in one quick sentence. So stick with me. I promise you we're going to win this thing. This is a big deal. This is my big deal. So I'm going to keep coming at you with it because I love you, I love my country, and I love my kids. And I want them to have the best of everything. And I want you to as well. Have a great day. This is Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives, hoping you learned something.